to share some valuable information on the college search and application process, as well as answer any questions that you guys may have. I do ask, though, that if you guys do have a question that comes up, please write it down or type it in somewhere. There's a good chance your question is going to be answered later in the presentation. And if not, we have a Q&A session at the end. Happy to answer any questions then. Okay, so let's get moving. Next slide.
Listen to me. I'm only going to say this once. We are going on the trip now. It's going to be rough. It's going to feel like it's going on for a long time, so it's going to be hard to stay alert. It's going to be even harder to be quiet, but you have to do both. You have to do every single thing I say, or we will not make it. Understand?
Now, I'm sure it feels that way sometimes, right? Looking back, looking at this project, this process, standing back, it can feel overwhelming, no doubt, okay? But assure you, we all get through it, right? We're here to support you every step of the way. And it's all about just taking a perspective of looking at it one day at a time, okay? Just starting off with the small things, all right? And that first question you should be asking your student is, do they want to go to college? What do they want to do after high school, okay? Because there are several options. We have 4-year private and public schools, okay, if your student wants to go earn their bachelor's degree and decide whether or not they want to continue their education after that. We have community colleges or 2-year schools where they can earn their associate's degree and again decide whether or not they want to continue their education after that. The military, there's a number of branches, and the ROTC program also has a number of options for students who want to eventually head to the military, but for now want to continue their education. We have trade and technical schools, which are becoming much more popular, okay, as you know, more and more successful trades, you know, are going forward. Employment, you know, they might just want to jump right into the labor force. Post-grad years, okay, for students who may feel like they need another year to improve their academics before applying to college, or they, you know, athletically may want another year to improve upon their athletics. Or sometimes students just need an extra year to mature before making that move and going and living on their own, okay? Similarly, gap years are also becoming more popular, okay? Some students, after 4 years of high school, 12 years of school, they just need a break. You know, we don't want them sitting on their couch playing video games. We want a structured gap year, but we'll still encourage students who are thinking about a gap year to apply to colleges this year. If they decide to take the year off, they can simply defer their college acceptance, have a gap year, and then get into college the following year, okay? It's much easier to go through the college application process here at Woburn High School than it is after you graduate and you're a little more on your own. Okay, we're always here to help, but it's easier when the student's still enrolled here. Next slide. So we give this presentation a number of times in the senior English classes. So it's a miniature version that all your students have seen at this point. Okay, this is more of a comic relief where, you know, again, it can feel overwhelming, all right? And so much of your time and energy is spent feeling anxious about this process, and we want them just to focus on small things to make them feel productive, okay? So simply, you know, doing some research online, you know, even just going to set foot on a campus, sitting down and just jotting down your list of extracurriculars or community service hours, you know, certain things that you do, they're gonna help you moving forward in this process, okay? Now, I'm gonna hand it over to Ms. Goldie, who has some other great suggestions for your students moving forward.
So this is really loud. So at this point, we've already had group presentations in the classroom. So all of your seniors have had this presentation in their classrooms. So now what we're doing is we're having individual meetings with students. So I've emailed all of my students and set up a number of appointments as with everybody else. And then if I haven't heard from them, I'm emailing them and setting appointments up with them. So they all should be meeting with us one-on-one in addition to the group meeting that we already did have. And so through that process, we're going through all of the slides we're going through tonight, and we're giving them a ton of information, more specifically geared specifically to them and their GPA and their SAT scores. So one of the really things I want to stress to you guys right now is in the next month, and I have a calendar to hand out, we're having a number of college reps coming right down to Woburn High. And I can't stress that how important this part of it is for your students if the school they want to apply to is coming down to Woburn High, that they take some time out of their school day to come down and meet with them. 99% of the time, it usually is the rep who is actually reading their application. It's not always the case, but typically the person, they assign college counselors to various schools. And so again, the one person who's coming to Woburn High is most likely the person reading your child's application. So if they have a top school, especially a reach school or a school they really want to go to, or even just haven't had time to visit and they want to hear more about a school, I highly encourage them to sign up. And they know this process. We have put it out to them. They're aware of it. The calendar is on their senior Google Classroom. There are paper passes for them to pick up in guidance, and they should be doing this. And if they're not, I think you guys should remind them, hey, don't forget, Endicott's coming down to Woburn High. You really want to go there. Make sure you sign up and go down and hear from them. The other thing is, a really good thing is there's a lot of open houses in the fall. So if you guys have toured colleges in the spring, those are great opportunities, or over the summer if you have done a tour of a campus, whether it be virtually or live in person, those are great opportunities. But the fall has lots of open houses that are coming up. And if you've been to an open house, they're set up a lot differently than a college tour. A lot of times there's professors on campus you can meet with, and my daughter wanted fashion marketing, and so we went over to the fashion marketing professor, we had to talk to them. They did presentations geared just to the major that you guys wanted. There was student panels, so an open house is a great opportunity, and they feed you, so that's always really nice. You're walking a lot on these tours, so it's nice to get some free food. So a lot of the tours are still virtual, but I would definitely encourage you to visit campus if you can. And if you can't, it's very time consuming as well. So if you can't physically get there, definitely do some virtual tours. Kids every year tell me that they're just going to apply and they're going to see where they get in, and then they're going to visit after. And certainly you can do that, but college applications are expensive. So I brought my daughter to a manual, and it was too small for her. She's like, I don't like this, so save yourself the $50 or $65 the application fee and don't apply there. So I definitely would encourage you to visit as much as you can live, or definitely do some virtual visits as well. So we did lots of searching with students in the springtime to look at some colleges, but it's not too late. Like if your son or daughter has not done anything, it's not too late. Now is the time to really start doing something, and they should definitely do some college searches. My own daughter, she had Naviance at her school. She actually used College Board a lot. However they want to do their searching, they should definitely do that, get that list of schools together, and when they meet one-on-one with their guidance counselor, then they can narrow those colleges down and kind of find out which is the right fit for them. All right, next slide. Okay, so everyone always asks, like, how many? So in general, I think it's around 6, maybe 4 to 8, 4 to 10. If you're a nursing student, I always feel so bad for nursing students because it's so competitive. So you're probably going to have maybe 10 schools on a nursing application, college list. But in general, like 4 to 6, 4 to 8 is a good number of colleges to have. 4 would be light. Every year I'll have a student apply to 1. And that kind of scares me, but if it's a safety, I guess, you can do that. But definitely you want to have a number of colleges on your list so that you can make sure that you're grabbing enough of them. And we kind of talk about that as we definitely want to make sure there's a range, right? And so everyone needs a safety on the list. So a safety is a school where your GPA is higher than what they're looking for. Maybe if you have SATs, your SATs are higher than what they're looking for, and that's going to be a safety for you. So you at least want to have a couple of safeties on your list, and safeties you like, right? So you don't want to make sure you're just throwing on schools here because you can get into that school. Sometimes you only get into your safeties. Every year is very different. It's pretty stressful, and so you want to make sure you have a safety on your list that you like, right? So definitely make sure you visit those safeties as well. A target school or a good fit school is you have right around that GPA that they're looking for. Again, if you're sending SATs, you have around the range of those SATs. And most of your schools should be in the good fit range, right? Because again, it's expensive. So you want to make sure the majority of your schools are in that good fit range. You have the GPA they're looking for, and you should hopefully get in if everything else works for you. And then a competitive school it's a reach, right? So you have a 3.8, they want a 4.2. It may work out for you, it may not. It's a reach, but you definitely need a couple of them. The real competitive school, like, BU, BC, certainly all the Ivies, those can be rolled the dice schools. So even if you're in that range, and the majority of your schools may be in that range, you also want to make sure you have a number of good fits, because those top schools are just that, they're roll of the dice. You could have everything that they want and you just don't get in. And sometimes I don't know why. I'll call Tufts and be like, why didn't you take them? And just didn't work for them that year. Don't know why. And usually there's no really good reason. It's just it didn't. So you go to the next slide. So this is a question that we're talking a lot about right now, is when to apply to schools. So a lot of kids, and I feel like colleges are pushing more and more to apply early, and I think that's a great idea if you're ready. It can be a little less stressful to kind of get everything done early and off your plate. You don't have to worry about it anymore, but it is pretty stressful, so going regular decision is fine. When you're trying to decide how you're applying, remember an ED decision is binding. So you're telling that school, yes, I love you and I want to go to you, and if I get in, I'm going. Because if you're going under an ED, you're actually signing an agreement like, I know, if I get in, I am going. And there's no way out of an ED decision unless you can financially prove it's a burden for your family. So, and I've never had a student who's done that, so I don't know anything more about that except they have all your financial information, right? You've completed your FAFSA, they've seen your taxes, so if you get in, you're going. Versus EA is early action. So you can apply to as many early action schools as you want. And again, remember, if it's a safety, I would say you might as well apply early. Just kind of get that off your plate, get it out there. It's really nice to get an acceptance back. So I love when kids apply to at least to their safeties early. It really is relaxing. Like, I have some place to go now. While I wait for my other schools, at least I know there's some place I'm heading towards in the fall. So early action. It is quick though, right? So it's almost October. A lot of the early action dates are November 1st, November 15th, December 1st, and that's early. It's weeks away. So if that feels too stressful, regular decision is perfectly okay. Remember, the early action it's nice to get it done out of the way if you can do it early. If not, regular decision is 100% okay. And rolling, I love rolling. Rolling's my favorite. So it's like as soon as you get all your application stuff in there, you're ready to go. So a lot of schools will have like a December 1st date, but and rolling. So I tell my students, hey, your goal should be December 1st. But if you miss that, you can do December 2nd, December 3rd, and as soon as they get all of your information in there, they're going to start reviewing your decisions. You tend to hear earlier back. Certainly if you're applying early action, you can hear a little bit earlier. Usually around the holidays, over that holiday break. So again, it's kind of a nice idea versus regular decision. You're applying in January, maybe February, so you're hearing much later in the spring. And I can say that can be stressful every year. So if your friends applied early action and you applied regular decision, you're not going to hear back as soon as them. And that's okay. But just want to remind, when kids freak out, I'm like, you didn't even apply until February. So of course you're not going to hear. So kind of just talk that out with your students. So just to recap, if it's you're close to that decision, that GPA, and it's a safety fuel for good reach, I may suggest you do apply early action and kind of get it done and out of the way. If it's a big reach for you to get into a school, I would say you should wait. You always want to put your best foot forward. So there's no reason to apply early action to a school that's a big reach for you, because you risk the chance of getting denied right away. Sometimes they'll defer students, so if you apply early action and they didn't quite like your GPA or your whole application and they want to see how you can perform your senior year, they'll defer you and they'll move you over to regular decision, but sometimes they just deny. So always put your best foot forward. So I always tell my students, if you think you can really improve this GPA and you're close, because GPA does go up slowly, it comes down slowly as well, which is really nice. But if you think you're going to improve your GPA and you think a regular decision is going to help your application, I'll tell my students if I think they should do regular decision, then you should wait. So there's no reason to rush if you're not ready for your applications. So most of the colleges are on Common App. And so what we did when we had our guidance presentations, we had everyone create a Common App and match their accounts, because kids will use a Common App to apply to schools, but guidance is going to use Naviance to send information out. So definitely kids will be using Common App, and it makes life a lot easier if you're applying to all these Common App schools. It's one application, it's one spot, you can keep track of all of your schools in there, it keeps track of deadlines for you. It's actually a great resource, Common App. There are a number of schools that don't accept Common Application. Endicott is one, Salem State is another. So for those schools, a student would go to that school's website. Right? So they're going to go to Endicott, and they're going to hit Apply Online. Salem State, Apply Online. Salem State is a free application, I think, if it's due before November 1st. So fee waivers, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, even though I know this year and last year was free for everybody, but typically you had to apply for it. So if you feel like your family has a financial situation where they require free and reduced lunch, I would definitely apply for it. And then you can get some free college applications, because it gets pretty expensive. So kind of keep that in mind when thinking about how many schools you're going to apply to. It's about $50 to $75 for each application. So if you're applying to 10 schools, it's going to be really expensive. So if you qualify for free reduced lunch and you need a fee waiver, let your guidance counselor know. And sometimes there's school-specific fee waivers. So when I took my daughter around, we went really late to a college visit in the fall of her senior year, and she went to talk to some schools, and they gave us fee waivers. Like, oh, we'd love you to apply. Here, take this fee waiver. So definitely make sure they do that. Remember, the college visits are coming down with guidance. Remember I mentioned that. That can also, sometimes the school may give a free application out there as well. Have your kids check their email. So as soon as they are reaching out to a college, whether it's a college visit or a college tour, colleges are emailing them. And my daughters didn't check all their emails. Make sure you're checking all their emails, and sometimes they'll send them a free application, and they wouldn't know that they're opening their emails. All right?
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob McCurtain. I'm one of the guidance counselors. Thanks for coming tonight. We always get asked, what is a college looking for? I have parents asking, about some of the top schools, like Carolyn mentioned, like BU and BC. And so I do agree with it's kind of a roll of the dice with some of them in terms of what exactly is going to make the difference with some of those top end places. But generally speaking, this is kind of a list of what schools are looking for. And in the transcript, I think it's just the body of work over the 4 years that you're in high school. A lot of people just think it's that junior year, but it's really the body of work, and hopefully there's either a consistent trend or an upward trend over the course of time that you're here. So we have kids who sometimes get off to a tough start in high school, but then kind of figure it out as they go, and that's a good thing. Colleges like to see that. The GPA, and you've probably heard this a lot, we weight just the same way the Mass State colleges do. So for honors classes here, the grade at the end of the semester, if it's a B, which is a 3.0, we calculate it as a 3.5. So we add 0.5 like the UMasses and Salem and the rest of the state schools do. If it's an AP course, it gets an extra point. So a B instead of a 3.0 would be calculated in as a 4.0 here. If it's a college prep class, a B is a B, so it's a 3.0 and it gets calculated in. So when we tell your sons and daughters that we have a weighted GPA, that's what it means. It's weighted based on the courses that they took. When a college gets the transcript, they recalculate the GPA on their own scale. So what we're giving them is definitely a helpful guideline, but you have to keep that in mind. Some of the more competitive places don't weight. So if we're telling them they have a 3.8 weighted GPA, it could be unweighted a 3.3, you know, because you take that extra 0.5 or point away. So it's just important to know that, okay, as you're going through the process. Excuse me. The standardized tests, and I know there's slides about them, but I will say that in talking to some admissions reps, I feel now more than ever it's strategy with whether or not you should send the scores. So if it's a test optional school, what I think has happened during COVID is that last year some students still did send the scores in, but it was typically students who were at the higher end of things. So I think that has skewed the numbers a little bit of what is called, you know, what their average numbers were for the reading, writing part of the SAT. So I would really talk to us about, you know, when you have your scores and what you're planning on doing if it's a test optional school. Okay, and for some majors or for some schools, they may require them, but it seems like we're hearing from a lot of schools they're continuing to be test optional. Okay, the extracurriculars. So I think I've talked to a lot of kids who have done some amazing things during the pandemic, whether it's, you know, getting PPE stuff out to healthcare workers or kids picking up more hours at work to help out at home with stuff, just all sorts of different stuff. So I think any of those things are important to highlight on the application, or there is a spot on the Common App that started last year if you want to speak to anything that you feel is relevant that happened during COVID. Some kids click no, and that's fine, but if there is something significant that you think to report, there is a spot to click yes and type a little statement about that. But I think it's important to highlight, like, you need to sell yourself and point out all the great things that you've done since you've been in high school, okay? The essay is obviously critical. It's important to have a couple of sets of eyes on it. I think there's a slide on this too, but just want to throw that out there that I think that's the hardest part of the application. So if it's some kids I'm talking to, they're done with it. Some I haven't even started, and I can tell it's like just that overwhelming thought of just getting into that. So it's important to get going on that. And some of the colleges on the Common App will also have what's called supplemental essays. So I was just on with someone yesterday who's applying to Providence. There's a specific question about why do you want to come here? What excites you about Providence, I think is what it said. Okay, so some of the schools will have additional essays. So it's important to go through to find out, do you need to write more than that one essay that's required? Okay. And then recommendation letters, we'll have a slide on those. Those factor into the decisions, obviously, and you know, obviously they're looking at how do you compare to other students. So we'll send the colleges a school profile of Woburn High that, you know, talks about our population here and our courses that we offer and things like that. So the colleges have an idea of, you know, what is available to students here, and then looking at the transcript, what did they take, how did they challenge themselves, and things like that. And everybody's challenge is different, so it doesn't mean that you had to have taken all APs. Everybody has a different path that they're taking here, okay? And then the last thing here is just interviews, auditions, and portfolios. So if your college, you know, requires interviews, obviously you need to do them, but if they're optional, I always tell all the students I work with, if you're comfortable talking one-on-one and it's easy, that comes natural to you, you should do the interview. It's just another thing, like when the reps come to our school, it's another thing that they can kind of check off as a positive for you as an applicant, okay? And then the auditions and portfolios come down to kids who are either applying to an fine art program or music program or something that they may need an additional supplemental piece of work to submit, okay? Go for the next one. So here's the essay slide, it's the next one. So this link up here can give you some information. I think it's just important, and these are kind of basic things, but make sure you're answering what the prompt says. You know, try to stay on track and be genuine and passionate. I always share this story. The best essay I've ever read, and I've been doing this for a long time, was about the student wrote about the first time they had ever made themselves their own meal because the parents went to work too early, and so they tried making scrambled eggs, and they ended up burning. And they had to call the fire department, and they had to come because they had started a little fire in the kitchen. But the way that it was written, I wish there was 5 more pages. It was just, I wanted to read more. It was very interesting. And the message was, I learned how I really kind of need to start learning to do stuff for myself and not rely on other people all the time. It was a great message and a great read. So I think sometimes we get stuck on the topic as well. And I don't think it has to be anything that was, so terrible that happened that you overcome. That could be it, but it could be as simple as learning how to do something for yourself, like make scrambled eggs, okay? So I think that's important just to keep in mind. But I would seek feedback from your English teacher, a past English teacher, us, meaning the counselors, we've read a lot of them as well. So I think there's the whole punctuation grammar piece, and then just feedback on the whole overall piece of work that you're doing, okay? In the spell check, so the other thing is I just say to kids, please don't fill out the application the way you either Snapchat or text or whatever, like all lowercase letters. Like I read that, like that's just not a good look. So just make sure they've really spell checked that and made sure the grammar looks right. And of course I mentioned about the supplemental essays. So it's important that you're aware of what they are and what else you need to write, okay? And I mentioned Providence, and I'm stuck on that because someone just had it. I know historically that supplemental essay is of great importance to Providence. I know BU has had one in the past too. So some of those schools, they really want to see, like, why do you want to go there? What is it about the school? Okay? We can go to the next one. Okay, so this is a thing that we push in the spring of junior year just to get them thinking about it, and now we're here. So the letters of recommendation, the kids should ask 1 to 2 teachers, okay? And if they haven't asked already, they really need to do it like yesterday. So they really need to get on it, and they should ask them in person. I think that's the best way to start rather than an email. They should ask them. There are some teachers who get asked by a ton of students, so they have to, respectfully say, I'm sorry, I'm already doing 30 or whatever it is. So that's another reason to just make sure you're on top of this. So you want to ask 2 teachers. It'd be great if it was from last year. I understand, and I think we all understand with COVID that it was different the last 18 months. So if you need to go further back because of that reason, there wasn't a connection. I mean, I think we can talk to the student about that too, but it'd be great if it can be from the junior year. Sometimes some kids as a senior have a teacher that they had as a freshman or sophomore, and so that's great too. You could ask a senior teacher as well. But ideally, obviously, you have a good rapport with that person. Hopefully you've done well with that teacher, so the letter can be kind of glowing in that way, okay? So after you ask them, there's a spot on Naviance where the student has to request them to write the letter. We have gone over that in the presentation this past week or week and a half, so the students should know where to find it. But if not, we can send them a reminder about how to do that, okay? The sheets, Ms. Anderson gave you the parent brag sheet. That's definitely very helpful. I often find stuff on those sheets that I had no idea about the student, and it's like usually really good things. So we really would appreciate your input on that. And the students know on Naviance and the Guidance Google Classroom, they can get the autobiographical sketch sheet. That has some short answers where, again, it's just more information about the student and things they've done and their goals and things like that. We're in this situation that we're in. There are a lot of them have remained that way, especially for this current class. So again, I think it's a strategy thing. I think it's looking at how did you do? Are you close to what they're looking for scores? What I've been told by some schools is that if you send them and it's an optional school, now it is part of their holistic review of the application, so they can't ignore the score that you sent. So even if it might not be in the range, it is part of the consideration. I think where that kicks in, especially if it's like a nursing program, if it's optional and it's below the average and you've sent it, that could hurt a little bit. So it's just very important to gather information. I think Carolyn has mentioned the college tours and open houses. Really tune into all that information about what are they looking for, what are the averages, is it optional, is it optional for everything but nursing, or what are they looking at, okay? We're a testing site. The dates are up there that are left. Some of the kids are taking one this Saturday, I think is the 2nd. The deadline for the 6th, the one in November, I believe is the 8th of October. I'm pretty sure about that, which is next Friday, I think, so it's coming up. So just want to make sure, once you miss those deadlines, I mean, hit for late fees and things like that, so you just want to make sure you get that down. And if you are taking one that's coming up, if the students are taking one, we've told them prep options, whether it be Khan Academy, that's a great free prep option that you can link your previous scores to get some prep with. Anything last minute building up that you can do now would be helpful. And then the last 2 ACT tests are coming up. Okay?
Excellent.
The subject tests, so these are, to be honest with you, these are becoming less and less necessary, I guess, at a lot of schools. But they're 1-hour tests, and you can take up to 3 in a day. You can't take the regular SAT on the same day as a subject test. So if you're at a school which, again, there's so few left that make you take them, but if you need to, you need to. So, there's still dates left coming up the rest of the year that you can take an SAT subject test. But it's important to find out what is required by the school you're applying to. So some schools may say they want 1 or 2, or engineering, so they want a math 2, and it just depends on each individual school. So you just got to make sure. I think having a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, a notebook, something that has dates, deadlines of applications, requirements, financial aid is just hugely important. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So here's where the two different companies, right? So you're registering for the SAT on the College Board. The writing tests are optional. If you're eligible for free and reduced lunch, like some kids just say, well, I don't eat lunch. I only eat till I go home, but they qualify. So I try to explain to them, well, this is the benefit. I'd like you to eat lunch, but even if you don't eat lunch, you can, and you qualify, you can get fee waivers for the test and for application. So that's really important to make sure they talk to us about that. If we're kind of late in the game for accommodations, if they haven't talked to us about applying for them. Last year it took 8 or 9 weeks to get a response back from the College Board for kids I had. So, that would be something that has to be done well in advance. The ACT has a science section built into it, so it's a little bit different. The math section is a little bit different. The overall time is about the same. It's just the way each subject area is structured in terms of how much time each one on the SAT versus the ACT is a little bit different. And kids kind of have different feedback about, I don't know if liked is probably a strong word, but they liked one test better than the other, or it just felt better to them. So it's kind of personal preference. But again, at this point in time, I think, unless, you really have to decide what's going to be in your best interest in terms of where you want to put your energy, especially with applications and essays and things like that. Okay? The thing at the bottom is really important, so it's up to the student and the family to send the SAT scores. We can't send them officially. The only way they can become official is through the student's account on the College Board or the ACT site. So if a college is requiring them or you're sending them, you may put them on the Common App. You may, there's a part to put your scores, report your scores. That's not official. They're official coming from the website. So when you're in your account, there'll be a little tab, send my scores, and that's where you click on. And they do charge you after a certain amount of time, if it's 12 elementary school or roughly, to send per school to send a report to. Okay? And you don't need to send them to all schools either. Like if there's 2 schools that require them, and you're going to go optional on the other ones, and you can choose where you want to send your scores to. Okay?
All right, next slide.
Okay.
Application process.
How are we doing? Do we need to breathe? This is a lot of information, I know, but it's good. Let's just take a deep breath. We're going to get through it. It's okay, people at home, take a deep breath. We're going to get through it. So we just wanted to kind of recap the responsibilities of all of the players involved here. So students and families, students specifically should be in touch with their counselor as soon as possible if they are planning to apply so that we can sit and have a conversation with them and make sure they're ready to go. So if they haven't made an appointment with their counselor yet, please ask them to, and then I would love to if possible. Students and families, their responsibility will be getting an application. via the Common App, or as was mentioned, if the college is not available on the Common App, applying directly on the website. And students can see us directly in guidance if they need a fee waiver or if they're eligible for a fee waiver. As Bob just mentioned, students must also submit their own SAT or ACT scores directly through those websites. And then counselors are going to be submitting transcripts on their behalf. Let's talk about this a little bit. There's several transcripts that get sent throughout the year. So if students are applying early action or early decision, which is a November 1st typical deadline, we don't have any finalized grades yet from the high school. So the only grades we will be able to send at that point are from freshman, sophomore, and junior year. However, they will show the classes that the students are taking this year. Many colleges want to see what students are enrolled in for their senior year. So we will first send what's called an initial transcript. And then colleges will always want to see term 1, which we will send automatically, and then also mid-year grades. So colleges are going to kind of track and see how they're doing all the way through the year. Then at the end of the school year, the one college that you all choose, we will send a final report to as well. This year is something new. Teachers are going to actually be submitting letters of recommendation on their own. It's through Naviance, but as Bob mentioned, teachers are going to be uploading them to the computer system after your child requests them in Naviance. Students will never read them, and then they're going to be sent right off to the colleges.
Excellent.
So as we talked about a variety of different sites, we want to make sure you know why your child should be going to each site. And it is a lot going on at the same time. So when kids might say, oh, I have to fill out my application on Naviance, it gets a little bit confusing. So we kind of wanted to break down all of the different sites and that your students should be navigating more than one at once. So the Naviance site is where all colleges must be listed. Now, students want to be very careful because last year they probably listed a lot of their schools under the colleges I'm thinking about tab, just as a brainstorming spot. However, all of those colleges must then be moved over to the colleges I'm applying to list. Only the colleges that are under the colleges I'm applying to list are going to receive a transcript and letter of recommendation. Also, I noticed when I was meeting with a student today that there is a button that students can check to just move them automatically over to that list, but then it defaults to the regular decision application type. These go back into their Naviance account to make sure that they have selected either EA for early action, ED for early decision, or RD, and then it looks correct to them. The autobiographical sketch, which is helpful for the letters of recommendation, is also housed in Naviance. And they will electronically request their teachers in Naviance as well. We did the matching with them in the in-class presentations, but if your child missed that, you can match the Common App and Naviance in Naviance. And then down the road, and this will come up later on, scholarship lists are going to be housed in Naviance as well. The Common App is a streamlined application service that many colleges subscribe to. So students will be applying on the Common App. College Board houses the SATs, ACT houses the ACTs, and the FAFSA is a separate website that you all will be navigating for financial aid resources. So there's a lot going on at once, and these are the sites you should make sure your child has an account for and that they are going to for the correct reasons. So this is a little screenshot on the Common App. If you haven't seen the Common App yet, it is pretty straightforward, but I wanted to speak for a moment around the FERPA Form. So Recommenders in FERPA is a section on the Common App, and it will show students very obviously like a warning symbol if this isn't done. So that's the cool thing about Naviance is you can't really submit without missing information. It will warn you and tell you if you're missing something. But this must be signed just one time, and it will attach to all of the schools, and it's essentially authorizing us to send student records, recognizing that the student records, that the one-time authorization goes to all schools on their Common App, and then also the student will waive their rights to read the letters of recommendation in this FERPA waiver as well. So this is what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward, but we wanted to point that out. The good news is this is a little bit less scary now. So in the past, because we use Naviance, If students added their counselor in the Common App, it would actually freeze their Common App account. The really good news is now that they filter them directly. They know our email addresses as counselors, and so it's not that scary. But this is just a reminder that students do not need to request counselors, and they don't request their teachers on Common App, strictly on Naviance. Okay? So this is the matching button we were discussing that we did do in classes. This is actually a screenshot of a student's Naviance account.
So in pink, you can see that it's kind of giving a little bit of a warning. You're not currently able to match the Common App schools. And the student will see the pink and it will turn green when it's been matched. There is a section that needs to be completed on the Common App before they're able to match, but it will give you a very clear indication of whether or not that's been done. And this is just a great little screenshot so you guys can see as well what your child sees when they add a college to the colleges I'm applying to screen. So you see UMass Lowell is the college they're applying to. The type is the admissions type, which is regular decision. It shows the student the deadline, the transcript request. Should we talk about that? We prefer actually that students will talk to us directly around transcripts. I think that's coming up later in the presentation. And then the submission type is either Common App or direct to the institution, which means you would be applying on the school's website. And that edit button, we can't see that, and parents can't see that if you guys have a parent Naviance account, but students can, and they can edit. For example, if they meant to apply early action or early decision, they can click the edit button and go right through and make any updates. I'm going to call Bob back up.
Okay, so at the beginning when Carolyn was mentioning that we have some college reps coming, I believe UMass Lowell might be next Friday. I know I shouldn't, I don't know why I know that off the top of my head. I think I was talking about this to somebody, but it's soon. And Salem State, I believe, is this week. So I would urge the kids, if they're applying to state schools, to come to those college rep visits, because this is great, helpful information about the state schools. Mass.edu has the sliding scale, meaning that if you're below a 3.0 weighted GPA, if you're between a 2.0 and a 2.99, it kind of talks about what does SAT score needs to be, or ACT, except that now a lot of them are test optional. So it has changed a lot. So I think it's helpful for the kids to hear what the admissions reps are saying about average GPAs and things like that. So even what you'll see on that, for example, do we have people looking at UMass Amherst? Probably, I would imagine that'd be one of the state schools, right? So like last year, like for example, the Eisenberg School of Management there is brutally difficult to get into. You know, you're looking at a little bit above a 4.0, even though the average might say 3.9 for UMass Amherst, you know, weighted. So it's just important, I think, for whether it's through tours or open houses or listening to the admissions rep to get the most current information. But this is a great resource. The GPA for state schools is definitely the driver. The recommendations and things are important if you're kind of on the bubble, but it's really, you have the GPA they're looking for the program, or you don't, and that's kind of how that goes. With nursing and engineering, sometimes those GPA requirements are a little bit higher within the college as opposed to other ones. Okay, and just being aware of some of the other, like the community college transfer program, it's a great option. So for some kids, it's not just about the GPA isn't what it needs to be. Maybe it's financial. Maybe it's they're just not ready to go and live away and they want to save some money and take a year or 2 years to get their associate's degree and transfer. So those are all good options for kids. And the Adams Scholarship is related to MCAS. So if the kids are in the top 25% of scorers here at Woburn High on the MCAS, they'll be eligible for a tuition waiver. I remember when I first heard it, I was like, this is unbelievable, free school. It's not, you know, it's the tuition. So for example, like UMass Amherst tuition might be like $1,300 and the fees and room and board is 20 something. So you get that initial $1,200 tuition, but it's something, right? So everything counts. So the Adams Scholarship, I believe that stuff will be coming out soon. Right, so you'll be notified if you've qualified for that scholarship. Okay, Jesse, ready? So this is the sliding scale, and again, I think that what I've found, I think we've all found over the last few years is while it's been followed, I think there's some flexibility in it, and it all relates back to like admission spots and the applicant pool. I think the UMasses, especially UMass Amherst and Lowell, the average GPA continues to climb each year to a point where being here for 15 or 16 years, it certainly has grown, like it's gotten a little crazy, I think, you know, like with what the average is. I think the UMass Boston, UMass Dartmouth is still, you know, a little bit more workable when it comes to this, okay? So that 3.0 though is kind of the marker with the state universities, the Salem, Fitchburg, Westfield, Worcester, Framingham, those ones, when you're at a 3.0 and it's not nursing, it's, you know, just for most programs, you're usually in pretty good shape with admission, okay? It's just the UMass Amherst and Lowell are a little bit higher, okay? And then the next one is just for the, you know, the smaller state universities. So the UMasses are kind of there, the 4 of them in a pack, and then you have the other 7 or so state universities, and this is their sliding scale. So the SAT score is a little bit lower than what it would need to be for one of the UMasses, okay? But basically all these guidelines by the state have been put up. So like when you apply to a school like the Department of Higher Ed in Massachusetts has made these guidelines. So it's a college, like if a UMass Lowell, you really wanted to go there and you had a 2.9, that has to go to their committee. It's, you know, the admissions committee, because they have to be able to really make sure kids who they accept stay and succeed and all that stuff. And that comes from the higher ups in the Department of Ed. So that's kind of how these things all got developed. Okay, next one. So just a couple things here, just the tuition break program. So if the student's applying to a college, if they're looking at a state college in Massachusetts and the major is not offered, there's a partnership among some of the state universities in New England, and that's the website that you could check out what majors are offered. So for example, if you had a major that wasn't offered at any of the Mass state schools, but UMaine offered it, you know, there's a possibility if you got in, you'd get a tuition break because we don't offer it as a state system here. Okay, but that's where you would find that. If you're looking to play a Division I or II sport in college, you do need to register with the NCAA Clearinghouse. That's the governing body of college athletics. You know, this is the website. There's a fee to it, and so you'd fill that out. We would get a notification, we meeting and guidance, that we need to send off a transcript to them to make sure you meet the initial eligibility requirement. If you're in this boat here, I just would say that kids have called us in August saying, like, the soccer coach says I can't get on the field because I'm not, you know, I'm not eligible, and we're looking through and like, well, you didn't do this, that's why you're not eligible. So it's really important that if they're playing a sport, Division I or II, you do not need to do this for Division III, that you make sure you take care of that. Okay? We'll go to the next one. The FAFSA, which we mentioned, it does stand for free application, so if you Google it, and there'll be some hits and you come to a site that's looking for your credit card, you're on the wrong one. So make sure you're on the right. It's fafsa.ed.gov. That's the FAFSA. It's a federal methodology. It opens on October 1st, which is Friday. It's hard to believe. So if you're applying early, like we've talked about, either way, I would suggest getting on top of it. It's just one of those things that you want to get going on. It's a federal methodology that looks at your tax and income information and comes up with what's called an estimated family contribution, an EFC, which is a financial number that the government believes you can afford to pay towards college without taking into account some other factors that could be in the mix. So this is one form that you should definitely fill out for all colleges require the FAFSA, okay? And there is a FAFSA festival coming up, it says on the 18th. The MIFA, that last little website there that explains the event, MIFA is also a huge resource for you with not just financial aid, but also just college in general. So I would highly encourage you to check out mefa.org. They have all sorts of videos and links and stuff that are super helpful in the process, okay? Next one, the CSS profile is not required by every college. None of the Mass state colleges require it, but some of the private, more competitive private schools require it. I will say from talking to people, it's a little bit more of a pain to fill out. It's a little bit more cumbersome, so you just want to make sure, again, if your college requires it, which the way to find out what you're required is go wherever you're applying, go to their website directly. Under admissions, there'll be a tab for financial aid and how to apply, and it'll tell you what forms, whether they just FAFSA or FAFSA and CSS profile. So you'll know if you need to do it or not. But again, I think it's good to get on top of these things early, just so, you know, all of a sudden we come in and it's like holiday season, and then we get into scholarship, and, you know, so it's one thing after the next. So this is a good thing to get on top of, okay? So the scholarships, one of the things I think Woburn does a great job with is scholarships, okay? We have two different things we do. Katie was showing you just on Naviance, there is a spot where you can look at all the different scholarships that are offered to Woburn students. And the applications are in the drawer and guidance, I believe that's where we're doing that again. So there's all sorts of scholarships from like youth sports kids might have played, to the elementary school they went to the Lions Club, all sorts of different stuff. So it's really a great opportunity. They start going on sometime usually in the next month or two, and then as they come in, we put them on Naviance, usually all the way through March, you know, and then at the senior scholarship night, at the end of May, before graduation, the kids find out, you know, if they got those scholarships that they applied for. So it's one of those things where you might have to apply to a fair amount to get, you know, one or two, but it's definitely worth the effort for that. And we also will have the Woburn High Scholarship Fund, so we'll have a meeting with the kids after the new year, sometime usually it's in February, and explain to them that process. So those are two great opportunities to get some scholarships. These are some other websites that you can check out. Some of them, like FastWeb, some kids create accounts. If they think they get a lot of emails now, when you join FastWeb, you're going to get more emails than you've ever seen before. They send you tons of scholarships, but a lot of them are, you know, they're national scholarships, so it's just filtering through what makes sense to apply for and whatnot. Okay. And the last one, yes, don't pay for a scholarship application. You're trying to get one, so you make sure you don't want to do that. Okay. So we always share this with the kids. I think just a couple of things like, you know, just being aware of what's on their social media, what can, you know, how that can affect them, because it can affect them negatively. So it's important, and I'm sure you're on top of them, and they're on their phones all the time. I get that, but it's just important to be smart about what we're putting out there. The senior slide, I think Katie just mentioned, we send transcript updates regularly throughout the year. So there really can't be a slide because colleges can reserve the right to do whatever they want if they see a difference in grades over the course of the year. I've saved a couple of letters over the years, just you know, crossing out the student's name thoroughly, but just when kids don't believe me and think you called me to tell them that, you know, it's like, no, this really happens. So you really got to make sure you stay on top of your grades the whole year. And then just the last, like if there is any credits to be recovered from previous, you know, failures in any subject, it's really important. Night school starts next week. We've given out seniors and we just mailed home, I believe today or tomorrow, the forms, just so you're aware, you know, if there's any credits to be recovered, you want to make sure we get them done so we're not kind of panicking going into that last semester next year. Okay. So yeah, just this quick summary here. You know, we want to make sure that the kids finalize their list and they're deciding on their testing and all these other things we've spoken about. I think that if the kids can stay kind of, you know, chipping away at things bit by bit here, by the time we get to, you know, the new year, and they can really focus then, okay, my applications are good, now I'm going to get to scholarships and, you know, work through that process. I think it'll make life a lot easier. So if they haven't started, it's not that it's too late. It's okay. I don't want you to leave here saying, oh my gosh, they haven't, you know, it's okay. We'll work with them. They just need to make sure, like I think everyone has said, we do send out emails, and I know they get a ton of them, but I always tell them ours are important, as I'm sure everybody else does, but they're usually about setting up times to talk and chat and see what's going on and how can we help them, okay? We'll go to the next one. So here's just the assignments, just in case. We did have a shift because, you know, we have Matt as the new director, and and so we kind of shifted around caseloads a little bit, and now we're all 9 through 12 with students instead of having a freshman counselor. So just in case you had any questions about who you have. Okay? I think that's the last slide, right?
Okay, folks, I really want to thank you and tell you how appreciative we are for your time tonight. Again, both here and there. If you have questions moving forward, please encourage your kids to come talk to us. Please feel free to come email us. Again, this is a process we're all going to get through, and hopefully you find it to be more exciting and thinking about the great strides your students are going to take after high school. Because again, these are great kids, and we're really excited to have them here at Woburn High School. Okay, thanks everyone.